This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. Pine Melon is the farmer's market delivered right to your doorstep. But this isn't just any grocery delivery service. Pine Melon connects with local farmers, ranchers, and producers, meaning you're supporting local agriculture with every order. Save time and skip a grocery trip by ordering online now at pinemelon.com. Plus, if you use code CityCastDenver, you get $75 off your first delivery. Again, use code CityCastDenver to save $75 on your first grocery order at pinemelon.com. Today on CityCast Denver. All across the country last week, Republicans made big gains. They won the Senate and the presidency. It looks like they're going to win the House. It was undeniably a red wave. Except here in Colorado. Literally every other state shifted to the right, but not here. So today I'm sitting down with the chair of the Colorado Democratic Party, Shad Murib, to hear what he thinks local Dems are doing right and what Kamala Harris did wrong. Today is Wednesday, November 13th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Shad Murib, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thank you for having me.
So every state in the country voted more Republican last week than they did in 2020, except Colorado. Every single state but us. Why?
I think it's really exciting that Colorado played its part. More counties in our state moved towards Democrats than away from him. And that is unusual in the landscape of the rest of the country. And I think it is exciting that that happened. We're very proud of it. We are all wishing that there was a different outcome at the national level. And so we're not necessarily excited about that in the context of this terrible outcome that we are now witnessing in the Midwest and in Nevada, our neighbor 2 states away. And so while we're glad to have played a part in making sure that we are enhancing Democratic support and making sure that we are a place that is able to find progressive solutions for people that have worked, which I think signals to our electoral success here, it is unfortunate in the grand scheme of having to suffer through another Trump presidency.
But really, I feel like it's not just us in Colorado looking at ourselves. It's the country looking at us because literally the only state that didn't do what everybody else did. Like, what are we doing, or what did Colorado do differently here?
Well, I think there are a few things that we did tactically and some things strategically that are just unusual. And I think people had some question marks about. I am the first chair from Western Colorado in decades. And so that refocus on rural Colorado and actually taking a look at counties that have often been left behind. We were investing thousands of dollars in places like Alamosa and Chaffee and Routt County and even out on the Eastern Plains. And what we found is that a little bit goes a long way in some of these communities. And so much of the work of politics is really about showing up. And in so many communities, we've been failing to show up, which I think explains what you're seeing in rural communities across the country. And the thing about the way we show up here in Colorado is that we're not showing up in some hyper-conservative way, putting this, Republican face paint on and saying we're Democrat light. We're preaching our values. We are talking about the things that matter to folks, like protecting the environment, supporting agriculture, supporting more housing being built in our communities, but we're doing so in a way that matches the lens of these communities and the way that they see the issues in their day-to-day life. That is something that we have found a huge amount of success in, especially in Western Colorado. And it was the reason I ran for chair to begin with, was to find a way to listen to voters primarily, hear what they're saying to us, and then match them in our policies and in our actions that fit within our democratic value set. It sounds overly simplified, but I think you'd be surprised to learn that the difference in Colorado is we listen and then we act. And in a lot of other communities, and when you get these big, expensive campaigns, you have a very consultant-driven mindset of let's find out what polls well and then go talk to people about that, when really you should be listening first.
Is there something that you heard that you all reacted to or responded to that could be an example of this change or this different approach?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at the mail and the digital that we were working with, let's say Adam Frisch in his congressional campaign, he's still got dangerously close to unseating that Republican stronghold and making sure we get a Democrat in there. What we did is we were sending out a lot of communication on water. And one thing I'm really concerned about is Jeff Hurd, who's now going to Congress, has had much of his campaign contributions come from people who are interested in selling off Colorado water. And that is something that I think we should all be greatly concerned with. That is not something that you see as a Democratic or Republican issue, but I am concerned about making sure that Colorado's water stays in the basin where it's born. And that's something that unfortunately we have to question if Jeff Hurd has that same value. And so that's an example of something that is deeply ingrained into a community that we decided to take on as an issue that was important to us and that was important to Adam.
We'll get to the Frisch Hurd race in a minute, but something interesting I'm hearing here is partially, like you said, Democrats maybe focused on areas that had been sort of just forgotten by the Democratic Party, assuming that like they aren't going to go our way, why try? So Dems here went after those places, but also, like you're saying, addressed issues that maybe don't impact urban Democrats the same way, or we don't think about them the same way. So water is just one of those things that people maybe on the Western Slope think about in a way different way than someone in Boulder thinks about it.
I think that's exactly right. And I think one of the things that you've actually seen a small shift in the Front Range Democratic parties compared to the rurals is in Denver, you had ballot measures 308 and 309. One would have banned the sale of fur, which would have impacted cowboy hats. And then you have one that would have shut down the only slaughterhouse, providing locally produced meat to customers. And it's a long-term business, strong Latino employees. And the Denver Democrats opposed both of those measures. And that's something that I think the more collaboration we have between the Front Range and our rural communities, the more you see this common ground around workers and making sure that workers are supported, but also supporting small businesses. But that was also an incredibly strong pro-agriculture stance that the Denver Dems took that you would not find as typical for a Denver Democratic Party to do. And so I think that's something that I'm really proud of, and I'm eager to see how we can grow that type of relationship between these communities. But when you take a look at places like Delta, Montrose, Rio Blanco counties, these are deep, dark red bastions of Republican parties, and they move towards Democrats this cycle. And that's because we have strong leaders on the ground who are showing up. They're raising money. They're recruiting great candidates. They're being inclusive of their neighbors. And when we do that, we can build power because people are really tired of this political division and the partisanship that seems ever present in everything you do, whether it's the beer you drink, the sport you like, the music you listen to. The more we can find some common ground around the values that shape the reason why we live in certain places, the more you can find an ability to not just win an election, but then be able to do big, bold things.
Well, then let's maybe talk about the Colorado GOP a little bit here, because they've been fighting amongst themselves all year. Their fundraising hasn't been strong. You know, they've had issues within themselves around the chair position. What role did the Colorado GOP's sort of ineptitude play in the Dems' success here?
Well, I think the scary thing to me is that, yes, the state Republican Party is a total disaster. Their dark money operation has never been stronger. And they have a constellation of dark money groups and funders that are eager to step in and fill that void, especially because there's very little accountability to know where that money came from and how it was spent and who was spent on. And that's the real danger about our politics right now, is there is still an enormous amount of money that comes in from the left. But in Colorado, from the right, it's almost exclusively coming from these dark money organizations because it doesn't have a strong political party apparatus that are subject to all sorts of disclosure laws where you can look up anyone's contribution history. You can see what they're spending money on. These dark money groups have networks nationwide that are impacting policy and impacting who becomes an elected official. And that's something that you saw play out in a really aggressive and often successful way in Colorado.
That's interesting because it's something I never hear from actual voters as a concern, but I do hear it from people in politics.
Well, it's
the dark money influence.
Yeah. And, it's all about that little disclaimer at the end of a commercial. So if it's a picture of one of our candidates in black and white in an unflattering pose, and, sure, you have to look and see who's paying for that. And often it's Coloradans for Colorado. Who the heck knows? You have to go do all sorts of research. And so money in politics is not only a problem, but it's also something that intentionally is left vague as something that voters are able to pick up on. Because one of the things that we have to understand is that voters are busy. They are working either one very intense job or sometimes multiple jobs, trying to get their kids to school. They're trying to have a social life. They're trying to maintain a really healthy marriage or relationship, or if they're single, they're trying to make sure that they can put food on the table for their family. they're not thinking about politics as much as people like me or you might. They're getting to think about it a couple minutes a month. And for those couple minutes a month, what type of attention are we giving our politics? The more we veer towards negativity and the more we veer towards division, you're going to see that reflected in the types of candidates we get and the type of politics we get.
This episode is brought to you by the Arvada Center, because they are presenting a zany, fresh, funny fairy tale musical for the holidays, Once Upon a Mattress. This is a laugh-out-loud musical version of The Princess and the Pea, and it's showing from November 22nd through December 29th. Once Upon a Mattress presents a new kind of fairy tale princess who stays true to who she is and what makes her unique. It's got incredible music, tons of laughs, and plenty of fun for the whole family. The Arvada Center is also offering child's price tickets for kids starting ages 4 and up. Once Upon a Mattress just wrapped up a sold-out run on Broadway with the iconic Sutton Foster. Seriously, if you're a theater fan, this take on a modern classic should not be missed. Plan some holiday fun for yourself and the whole family now. Tickets are available at arvadacenter.org. That's arvadacenter.org.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
According to exit polls, the Democrats' new power base is college-educated, relatively affluent white people, which is a type of person there's a lot of in Colorado. I've heard some people, probably most notably Senator Bernie Sanders, say the Dems lost the working class because of economic issues. Do you think it's as simple as voting Coloradans typically being able to afford to think more about social issues when they pick a president?
No, I think that one thing that we've learned in this election cycle, and something that I've felt, but I think was saddened to see in the electoral results, is often I'm the only Democrat in my ranching circles or the only rancher in my Democrat circles. And what I've found is that we often all care about the same things. It's just how we talk about them can feel different. So when you're talking to the average rancher and they see an ad for a Democratic politician focused on climate change, they care less about the issue from the perspective of air quality and air pollution more than they do about drought, or if hunting migration patterns or animal migration patterns are changing, because that impacts your everyday life, and that's something you can understand. So that is caring about climate change, but it's caring about it from the lens of that person who's actually in the field all day. And I think that when you take a look at working people across this country, we do have a tendency to ignore the fact that anybody should be able to get a good paying job, whether you go to college or not. You should be able to find a house that you can afford, and housing scarcity not only makes us all worse off, but it also makes us fearful of our neighbors because suddenly we're in competition with each other, which is why I think that immigration message is so powerful from the Republican side. Is when you feel like you're not able to afford a house, when you feel like there's fewer housing options available, groceries are really expensive, gas is really expensive, suddenly that type of message that divides us can feel really potent because you want to be able to take care of yourself and your family. And that's something that we really have to think very, very hard about when we talk about these policies, when we bring out celebrities to our rallies. What type of message are we sending to the everyday voter about who we care for and who we're championing? And so I think we have to show up at the places where voters are giving their attention. We have to be able to go to football games. We have to be able to not just go on Joe Rogan once every 2 years, but we have to start building a climate where Democrats can go onto these platforms and not feel like it's us versus them. Even in places where we might have disagreement, I think we have to be able to find common values that can be translated to each other in really healthy and productive ways that boost our civic life.
So when you say, like, I'm thinking a lot about, I went to a Bernie Sanders rally a long time ago, and my friend's band Devotchka was there. And so that was a message to me, right? So this time around, I think Democrats really did roll out some big celebrities, like Beyonce, for instance. Like, do you think that was like do you think at any point this is part of the problem?
Not at all. I think it's a yes and. I think we have to be able to do everything. I think we have to be meeting people where they're at. So having Beyonce and having her come and endorse a candidate is incredibly powerful because she is an incredibly important role model to millions and millions of Americans of all backgrounds. But we also have to be able to go to the places that are cordoned off as Republicans only and be able to go share our message there, the same way that they often do to us. It is not that unusual for Republicans to appear on MSNBC or to try to come on progressive podcasts or TV shows and prove their point. Even if we find it offensive and gross, they're still talking to that community. So we have to be able to do the same thing. And what we have to do is really focus in on this belief that I have, which is that the next frontier of Colorado politics is local. We have to be able to go to our 4-H meetings in rural Colorado the same way we also have to go to Friday Night Lights, the same way we also have to go to making sure that our African immigrant community is supported in Aurora. You know, we have to be able to do everything because if we want to be a party for everybody, we have to show up everywhere.
The party for everybody thing is interesting when we talk about the look at the national politics and how the Dems did there. But it is interesting to look at Colorado and look what the Dems did and then look nationally. What do you think the Harris-Walz campaign did wrong?
I think they did a lot of things right. I mean, when you take a look at the national headwinds that we were facing, this unfortunately did come down to what everybody thought it was going to be, which is essentially a margin of error race. It was 100,000 voters here and there in these battlegrounds. It shifted a couple points to the right, and that caused some of these states to go red. I think that Kamala Harris was an incredibly inspiring candidate. I think that she had 3 months to build up something that often takes campaigns 2 years and did so successfully, and is also running against one of the most vocal and shameless politicians of our modern era, and to do so in such short time and have as much success as she did is something to be commended. What I do think that we have done wrong as Democrats generally is we haven't spent enough time listening. And I really do believe that when you put some of these things into your campaign apparatus and into your theory of change, you can achieve big things. And I say this with great respect for the way that we've run campaigns. I think sometimes we pick our values, we micro-target to such a hyper extent that we don't create something that everybody can see themselves in. And when you go in deep canvas and when you're really getting to these communities, it's something I said a couple minutes ago about you really start to realize that everybody cares about the same things. They just have different ways of viewing them and different ways of talking about them. And that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice any of our values. As a Democratic Party, whether you're a progressive or a moderate, we all tend to believe in the same things, which is you should be able to get a good paying job. You should be able to live somewhere safely and not have it break the bank. You should be able to get sick and not go bankrupt, but instead get great care and come out of it on the other side better. You should be able to marry who you love. And these are things that I will 100% never suggest are partisan issues. These are just values we have. And when we can actually prescribe policy solutions that address them, we're going to have great success. And I think that's something that we've really done here in Colorado well, is that we've identified these issues that matter to folks, and then we've acted rather than telling them what they should care about. And you'll have a lot more success that way.
So we have to talk about, it wasn't a clean sweep by any means for Dems here.
Nope.
In Colorado. You mentioned this, but Jeff Hurd beat Adam Frisch in the 3rd district. But the one I really want to talk about is Democratic incumbent Yadira Caraveo losing to Gabe Evans up in CD8. What do you think happened in this race?
Well, I think that Yadira Caraveo is among the best of us. For folks who don't know her, she's a pediatrician. She's a daughter of immigrants. She has never taken the easy path in life. She's always taken a path of service. And so losing her is a tremendous loss for the United States Congress generally. And we're really disappointed about that. A loss is a loss. None of us would ever celebrate a loss, but she did lose by one of the smallest margins of any battleground congressional race where a Democrat wasn't successful. So we know what we did worked. I think what we thought is we were going on the offense, and in a lot of ways we were piling up sandbags. We were fighting this onslaught of dark money and this shift towards Republicans that, although minor, carried an impact in a race like this that was as tight as it was. And so a couple of the things that give me great confidence is that in Colorado, Latinos voted for Democrats more than the national average. And I think that's because we've elevated folks like Yadira Caraveo. People can see their shared experience in people like her. But I think what happened there is it was the only seat drawn to be competitive in the redistricting this last cycle. Our independent redistricting commission made every single seat safer for its incumbent party, except for CD8, our new district, which is straight 50-50. And so we threw everything we could at this race. We're disappointed that we lost, and we're going to assess what we could have done better. But I don't think we could have had a better candidate. I don't think we left any stone unturned. I think that we have to take a hard look at making sure that we understand who shifted to Gabe Evans and why, and figure out how we can win them back. And that's our responsibility. And that's something I take really seriously. And a loss is a loss. And I'm not happy we got that close. But I do think that it's an opportunity for us to learn and get them back in 2 years.
So only 56% of Latinos went for Caraveo, which is the lowest percentage of any congressional race. What does that tell you about this district?
So in terms of what actually happened with the Latino vote, again, in Colorado, we had a higher percentage of Latinos who supported Democrats than across the country. And I think that we have to take a hard look at if anyone decided to choose the Republican Party over us, especially in CD8, where we're having, Yadira Caraveo leave office and Gabe Evans is entering. We need to take a hard look at why and address that. And that's something that we can be honest with ourselves about. We don't have to say that we did everything we could and that, shucks, it was just a national wave. That's a really political answer that I'm not going to give you. I will say, if there is a shift, we need to figure out what it was and address it in the next 2 years. And that's something that I think that honest politicians and honest brokers will do.
I have to imagine that at some point you're going to be getting a call from the National Democratic Party. Maybe you already have. I wonder, what advice will you have for the National Democratic Party going forward?
Well, I want to make sure that Colorado has a voice in leadership, and we're working on figuring out what that looks like. It is not right to me that we would put folks in charge from states that saw rightward shifts that we were able to prevent here. And so we're looking to make sure that Colorado and the lessons we've learned are center to the Democratic Party's strategy nationally moving forward, because we've shown that when you listen to people, when you bring more people in, when you're inclusive, and when you invest in communities, not only in the cities, but also in the outstate areas, you can have incredible success, even in a sort of Trump tsunami that the country just went through. And so I am already having a lot of these conversations with other state party chairs and national leadership and folks who are pursuing national leadership. And
are you one of those people?
We are certainly being asked to consider it. And, look, if that's something that materializes, I think Colorado deserves a voice on the national stage. It's been a long time since we've had sort of the eyes of the nation on us. It's been since 2012 that we were really considered one of these top tier battlegrounds. I'm proud that we're at the spear tip of a blue electoral college vote, but that should also mean something in terms of us knowing how to get us out of these Trump years as we work to defend our communities and protect folks from the very worst things that are about to happen in these next 4 years. And that voice is going to be more important than ever.
So would you take that opportunity if they asked you to come on down to Washington?
I'll be talking to, there's some folks who have already floated their names out there, and we're having conversations with them to see how they view the Mountain West and how they view Colorado. And as we're looking at all the candidates, if there's not an appetite to take what we've done here and scale it up, we'll have to figure out how we force that conversation, because now is not the time to do the same thing as usual. Now is the time to take a real hard look at ourselves and figure out, how do we bring back these voters who used to be supporting Democrats as recent as 4 years ago, as recent as 2 years ago, but have decided that we're not worth the investment, not worth their vote at this time, and win them back. We have to be honest with ourselves that that happened. So we're going to be doing that right here at home, but we're also going to be doing that nationally, and I want us to have that leadership.
Shad, thank you so much.
Thanks.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Vice President Kamala Harris about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya. talk about any politicians that we'd want to talk to? Kamala Harris. Tell Kamala.